this brings me back to something else I kind of realized recently, which is, when obviously I got to speak to a lot of your team at Rec recently, and I was asking a lot of, trainers about how they go about getting referrals and that kind of thing, and learning a lot. And I sort of started to think, oh, hang on, most of Discover Strength's referrals come via proactive referral seeking, being creative with the listen and ask method, which you've taught before inside the membership, about how to engage with the client, learn about people they know and problems they have, and help solve those problems and invite them in for a free workout. And there's loads of other obviously different tactics that a trainer can use or a business owner can use to ask for referrals from existing clients. It's very much a proactive approach. But you said to me that actually, maybe 10 or 20% come via that way, but like all the rest come organically. So it's important to make that clarification, right? That when you're talking about what you just said there in terms of 10 clients trained twice a week, that this is organic referrals. These are happening spontaneously. You're not asking for them. That's an important distinction here, right? Because you can throw gasoline on the fire and probably get a few more by being proactive as well. Is that fair?
We got to touch on two really important points here. The first point is back to our kind of mediocre analogies before, but the analogies are right. When you use ChatGPT, when you're done using it, they don't say, please go tell a few of your friends about us, right? If you dine at a wonderful restaurant, when you're leaving, they don't say, did you have a good experience? Will you please go tell someone? You just go tell someone. So truly wonderful experiences, great products, we don't have to ask for referrals. So, I mean, it makes sense when we think about every other industry, right? Every other product or service that we're spending money on. Now, the same is true of our industry. If you ask any of our staff, if you ask our exercise physiologist, hey, what's the best way for you to get referrals? They will tell you, you got to listen and ask. The reason they're telling you that is they've had a rock at some point. Most of them have had a rock where I got to leverage 3 referrals in the quarter. Okay. And as they're thinking about the 13-week quarter, they're listening and waiting for opportunities to ask. So they leverage those 3 referrals. So yes, maybe those 3 referrals came from a listen and ask. They're ignoring the other 97 referrals that came in that quarter or even in that month that had nothing to do with listen and ask. So if you look at one trainer and say, you got to get some referrals over the next few weeks, they're going to listen and then they're going to ask. And I do believe that increases the referrals. But overall, it's 10 to 20% of total referrals. The totality of referrals you're getting, most of them should just be organic. Now, even the listen and ask, I don't know where the separation between organic and listen and ask is, because you can't listen and ask effectively if you haven't delivered value first. So you can listen and ask all you want, but if you haven't created a really good product, you're not going to be successful in the listen and ask.
It's far more likely to be an awkward conversation, isn't it, if you attempt to go that route first? I really want to get into the meat soon in terms of the how and the principles and the questions that I think people need to ask themselves. One more thing before we get there. Something you said which really fascinated me. You said, look, you kind of qualified this podcast. You said, look, if you want to build a kind of, you didn't say this, but I'm reading between the lines, like an average business, maybe you don't have to have a great service and you can just do some marketing and grow that business. But if you want a really high revenue, high profit business, you need to have a great service, right? And obviously I say service because we're talking about hit. What is that? Can you quantify that? Like, do you, go ahead. Yeah.
Right. No, I'm sorry for interrupting you. You go ahead.
Yeah. Let me just say what I'm trying to say is, do you think that someone could build a, I don't know, $100,000, $500,000 business, with a mediocre service? Or, I'm trying to understand, like, what does that mean? Like, because I know, for instance, Luke, and you know this, that not everyone wants to build Discover Strength, right? Because they don't want to build to that scale necessarily, but they would like to have a great service that does just generate referrals on autopilot, right? So I'm just curious, are there levels to the service? I don't know if that makes sense. It's a bit of a modeled question, but do you know what I'm getting at here?
Yeah. So a few really important points that we have to address here. So, the first one is, well, what if you just want a smaller business? If you had asked me this 15 years ago, I would have said yes. If you just focused on the product or experience, you can grow and run a small lifestyle business, and that's the key. Okay. Now, in 2023, I would say if you want a small lifestyle business, yeah, maybe the product or service doesn't need to be as good and you could just do some marketing. But if you really want to grow, the product's got to be really good. So I think the reality is the product's got to be good in either case. Okay.
Sure.
I mean, I just know that you cannot build a 10 or $100 million company or $1 billion company unless the product is a really, really good product. Okay. But I just haven't, I lived it for years and years and years and years, one studio or two studios, for a long time. And it was no marketing whatsoever, no marketing strategy, no marketing spend, no marketing anything. And it was just about make the product better, make the product better, make the product better. Either direction, whether you want to have more revenue, and I don't know what the definition of more revenue is, if it's $1 million a year for one studio, or if it's $100 million business, or less revenue. And let's say, hey, it's you and it's maybe one other trainer, and your revenue is $150,000, $200,000 a year. Maybe the key is profitable revenue. I think that's the discussion. If you're spending money on marketing, the quote, just the Jay Baer quote is, marketing is the tax paid, or advertising is the tax paid on unremarkable products. And I truly think it's advertising and not marketing. So advertising is the tax paid for unremarkable products or remarkable experiences. So, I think regardless of what size you are, you probably want to be profitable, right? We definitely all have colleagues and friends who are running businesses of all different sizes that surprisingly are not as profitable as we thought. $20 million businesses that just don't have much profit. And then there's $200,000 a year businesses with great profit margins. So I would just frame it up as, if you want profit, you should probably do this. We also probably have to make the very important caveat that most hit businesses would be much happier if their business grew a little bit more, because there's just more efficiencies that are involved with it. You're just more gross margin to the bottom line. And as much as you say, this is the size of the business we want, I don't want it to be much bigger. No, in reality, you and your spouse and your employees want it to be bigger, because if it was just a little bit bigger, all of your fixed costs are staying the same. You'd be putting your more contribution margin now to the bottom line. And you are paying for things like maybe 401k and health insurance. And you as the owner could potentially work less if you want. There's this thought that if you own a business, suddenly you're sitting back and money's just coming in the door. Your listeners know this. It's not coming in the door. You got to really work for it. Or if we could grow our revenue just a little bit more, wow, that's when we just put so much more profit to the bottom line. And then we start to build an asset that has value beyond us. So I don't buy into the fact that, people are happy with what their current studio is, especially if you ever want to remove yourself a little bit from the business. So I'm sure Doug Holland's not listening right now, but if he was listening, he should not follow any of this advice, because he wants to be the revenue generator, right? He wants to be working with the client. That's his genius. But I've never seen the exception to this. The hit business owners that I talk to want to work in the business less. Well, if you want to work in the business less, you just need higher revenue, and you need more profitable revenue. You need that contribution margin over and over and over and over.
Yeah. Oh God, so many questions come up for me during that. The first thing I just want to clarify is, obviously, we should all be really, really proud of the service, keeping in mind that it's about what the consumer thinks, not what we think. That's an important distinction you made. But obviously, I am not at any point during this podcast saying that we should strive for mediocre products and services. That's certainly not what I strive for. But what I love about this is, really, this is kind of what we all want. And I don't understand why we're quite ignoring it, because actually most people I speak to don't enjoy the marketing, and they get frustrated. Do you know how many times, Luke, I've heard, I've done a Facebook and Instagram campaign and it didn't work. Now, I don't often believe that, because I think normally they probably don't have a big enough test size or didn't do it correctly. But anyway, that's aside. The point is that people get overwhelmed by all these different marketing channels and tactics, when the beauty is, if you just focus on having a great service and really investing in that, then that's going to solve a lot of these problems. And you still want to do some marketing, but you don't have to be as obsessed about all the channels, right? Now, I'm just curious. You started saying that, and I'll say this briefly because I know we want to crack on with the how.
Lawrence, I'm going to forget this if I just don't say it right now. It's here, so let me just throw this out there. I think you have to decide, and I'm not going to make that decision. And I think either decision is a fine decision. Do you want to build a business, or do you want a passion project, right? And a passion project is, I read Body by Science. I think strength training is important for people, and I want to open a business that does it just like that. Okay. For example. Or do I actually want to listen to the customer, listen to the marketplace, and build a business that's going to resonate with the marketplace? Now, I think you can do that without sacrificing, what's important to you. but I think so many decisions stem from that decision. Like a lot of hit businesses are basically collecting equipment that they could have in their garage and just work out by themselves. But then they take it one step further. We have a lot of people that are caught in this middle ground where they don't really want to go all in and say, yep, it's a business and I want to actually, try to grow it and have it meaningful to a consumer and to the market.